Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. And I'm thankful for every one of you that get a chance to sit with us. And if you're watching us live while we're on YouTube, we appreciate you joining in the chat. And if you're watching a little bit later on, that's quite all right as well. Again, remember that we want to stay informed without being overwhelmed. And so that's one of the reasons why we began to do these. It's a very important thing, I believe, that we continue to do, and to make sure that we stay informed of things that are going on in the earth, but at the same time, do not become overwhelmed with the machinations of evil, if you will, the games that people play, the systems of this world. After all, we know from the Bible that to love the world is to have enmity with our Elohim, and we don't want that. So we want to watch and we want to keep an eye on the things that are happening throughout the earth, but we also want to be wise about our involvement. I pray you all can hear me very well. Somebody give me a 5x5. If you can't hear me, let me know. If the volume is too low or too high, please let me know that so I can make adjustments. I had to go to a different microphone. Woke up one day, couldn't find my microphone. It's the strangest thing. We still can't figure that one out. We don't know if it fell in the garbage or what. Thank you, Sister Octavia, for that. And always appreciate all of you. I tell you, this last few days, I've just redoubled my gratitude for the remnant. How extraordinary you all are. Sometimes we look back and we look at where people that we knew 10, 15, 20 years ago and where they are. And then you grow appreciation for the people that are with you, that are following along, that have not abandoned, that have not gone off into the world, that did not forget their salvation, right? These are all important things. And so I'm thankful more than ever for every one of you who stay faithful, who are honorable, honest, and sincere followers of Messiah. Amen. And so that is the basis upon which we review news. And we want to look through the lens of the Bible so that we can see the day approaching as we are commanded to do in Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 25. And one of the things that we have put up for those that are brand new or maybe watching for the first time, we have a website called Remnant Watch, and we use this to keep track of all of the stories that we put up and discuss and add to the conversation, if you will. And it's just our way of keeping track of it, and we do minimize the advertising as much as we possibly can. There is some things we just cannot get around, but we do try to minimize the distractions. And again, you'll find all of the stories that we're going to be discussing tonight and have discussed in previous broadcasts here as a ready reference and easy for you to review. If you just want to look at the titles, that's fine, and you can catch up that way. Personally, I don't read every article. Again, I have to guard myself from being overwhelmed as well. As I'm led, I may go deeper into a matter. I may look deeper, but a lot of times I will look at it and I will get by the Ruach, by the Spirit, exactly what's going on, and I don't need to go any further. And we do need to be careful, folks, about what we put in front of our eyes. So when something says viewer discretion advised, you might want to think about that, just saying, because there are some things that are really hard to see and difficult on your spirit. You may find it hard to let go of some things that you may see, and you can't unsee some things. There was a video that came out that I will not show you of how they make ground beef. And I want to tell you something, folks. This is something we've been doing really for the most part since we came back from Israel, is grounding, our own food. And it's one of the reasons why we will not eat in public. But that's one of those videos you don't come back from. So if you did see it, if you happen to be one of those people that saw it, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't even need to say anymore. You're still traumatized by what you saw. I promise you're traumatized. And if you didn't see it, you don't need to see it. Take our word for it. It was disgusting. And these are the kinds of things we need to be aware of so that we're not walking forward blindly into traps, into lies, deceit, cons, all kinds of things that are going on in our world. And one of the biggest things that we have to be aware of is that we were told by Messiah, and this was just before the coming, the return. He told us to be aware that there would be wars and rumors of war. And so it shouldn't surprise anyone that our lead story tonight is Israel carrying out largest military strike in the West Bank in 20 years. And why this is a disturbing story is because if you've been watching Israel at all, there have been a number of altercations on the West Bank and in the occupied areas of Israel where even children have been killed. So, you know, we're watching the responses. We're watching of the things that we're seeing. Concerned about what we're seeing here in this time period. After all, you know, our responsibility as the children of Yasharel, remember how we're commanded to treat the stranger. So those who dwell among you, they ought to live by the same Torah as you do. No exceptions. Yahuwah was very clear about that. So we're watching something else here. And that should be clear to you so that you understand. And so these are the things that we're keeping an eye on right now. And this is, again, our top story. So Israel attacks Jenin in biggest West Bank incursion in 20 years. At least 8 Palestinians were killed and dozens were injured as a major Israeli offensive targets the city of Jenin. Israel has launched a major aerial and ground offensive in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin, its biggest military operation in the Palestinian territory in years, in what is described as an extensive counterterrorism effort. At least 8 Palestinians were killed and 50 injured, 10 seriously, on the attack that began about 1 a.m. And the death toll is likely to rise, according to the Palestinian Health Authority or Health Ministry. And I really find this really difficult to listen to because we used to live, of course, in Israel, not for a tremendous amount of time, but long enough for us to feel affection for these areas. And, you know, when you hear about drone strikes and things going on like that, where it's almost indiscriminate, and I'm sure they'll come back and tell us how laser pointed it was and how they were after specific targets and specific people. But is this a new form of policing? When there's bad guys in a neighborhood, we just send in the drones. We just send in the bombs. This is, again, fulfilling Bible prophecy that fire would fall from the heaven, that there would be weapons of warfare that would be unleashed upon the people. And so right there where those scriptures were written, these things are coming to pass. And so, again, continue to pray as we do every single day for those in the land of Yasharel, in the land of Israel. We continue to pray for them because this is a very difficult theater of operations. And it's interesting that this erupts. And, of course, with all of the various things going on now, if you needed to do some cleaning up, if you will, maybe now's the time you do it. It also seems interesting, as we were watching last week, and continue to keep an eye on this whole judicial review situation. It's almost, to me, as if they need some kind of distraction. And so this is very disturbing. And with people dying and things happening to innocent people that are, in many cases, some of the nicest people you probably ever want to meet. And so it's very, very tragic. And this is something that I, again, encourage you all to continue to pray. There's not a lot else you can do. But that is a big thing because the prayers of the righteous availeth much. And we know your prayers are heard on high. So please continue to pray for those living in the land of Israel, because as you can see, this is getting, again, aggressive. And the world situation has changed. All right. So up until this point, Israel had its big brother, the United States, to sort of back it up and hold everybody back, if you will, and be the big brother, if you will, that Israel needs. The United States has a multi-front war going on right now. And so this is a very dangerous time worldwide, because you know that there are prophecies that speak of the destruction of the United States, the neutralization of the United States of America. And so are we seeing provocations? Are we seeing the beginnings of conflict that will dramatically change our world? And I told you all, as we've been going through the last 4 reports, if you go back, you'll hear that, while they kicked the can down the road at the beginning of the year, right? They kicked the can down the road, or the beginning of this last month, rather, to get the, quote, debt ceiling elevated. Remember that. And so, they breathed a collective sigh of relief, as if that was all they had to do. But as I mentioned to you, it's one thing to raise the debt limit. It's another thing for you to be able to borrow, for there to be lenders. And as you can see, the world is turning its back on the corporation that has been operating out of Washington, D.C. The world is turning its back on it. And as I said, I find it very difficult to believe, based on some of the information I've discussed with you and other information that I'm just watching behind the scenes, and I find it very difficult to believe that that we will make it through the summer without some major dramatic changes. And I appreciate everybody else's other opinions, and maybe y'all start your own channels and share those opinions. But I'm just telling you that it looks to me, from what I'm seeing, and not just the channels that we are talking about here publicly, but also back channels. I have yet to see so much chatter going on as I am seeing right now. So what I mean by that, and for those of you that are ex-military or veterans or maybe active duty, you understand what chatter is. And so chatter is conversation levels on certain topics or certain issues. And we're seeing a high level of chatter that is indicating major things are about to pop off. So, those warnings where you keep hearing people say you should have a certain amount of food and water and things like that, that's a really good idea. Because we could be seeing some serious disruptions to what we consider status quo in the very near term. This whole kick the can down the road thing that that many people were hoping was going to be the case. I just don't see it. And I would not, again, be surprised to see some more surprise announcements and surprise things occur in the short term. That's not to say that this whole time period and going into 2024 and beyond that, that it isn't going to build to a further crescendo and even more things are going to happen. I'm just simply giving you that sense of alert that's in my ruach for this time period. And there are certain things that I believe are indicating, are telling us that these things are collapsing right in front of us. For example, this may have gone under the radar for most of you because there's been discussion. People have said it. You might have seen a news clip or a sound bite. But did you know that an impeachment resolution against Joe Biden did in fact pass the House and now moves to 2 committees for review? And so a lot of people may not have known that they've already had an impeachment vote that passed. So that is big news, folks. That is a big piece of information. And if that had been a Republican, we'd have been hearing about it every minute for the last, few weeks, if you will, or last week anyway. And we certainly would have been hearing about it on its ramp up. So understand that there's a definite effort to manage your understanding of the conflicts that are going on right now, and the gravity of them. And this is a part of what I believe needs to happen. I do believe that there is a exposure of criminal syndicates, a good word, criminal organizations, crime families, crime organizations. I don't think you can deny that anymore with the amount of evidence and information that continues to come out. I think it's pretty easy for anyone to conclude that what we're watching is the slow exposure. And if I'm going to take a moment to take a little bit of a side little walk here for a second, folks, and tell you something that I believe is important for your review. There's many people that would have loved for, the military to walk in, 2021, walk in, grab all the criminals, put them all in jail, and that's it. We're all done. And there are a lot of folks that really felt strongly that that's what should have happened. And honestly, I can't say that I didn't agree with them to some degree. After all, when you know that there's criminal behavior going on, when you can smell it, see it, feel it, you can see evidence of it, and there's nothing happening, it's very frustrating. But that was the intention, I believe. I think this was very well planned and well thought through. I have to give credit to those that are doing that planning, because had they told you that you were being ruled by a criminal syndicate, you wouldn't have believed them. Not the numbers that today believe it. Today, the number of people that are awake to the criminal syndicate, if you will, is exponentially higher than it was just 2 years ago. The number of people that are now aware of the criminality in big pharma, for example, who were dead asleep in that area, now awake like never before. More discussion on that, despite censorship, despite every effort to control narratives, that has exploded. The awareness level has exploded. How about big food? When have you seen so many exposés to the point where the number one fast food franchise and 2, 3, and 4 not far behind them are closing locations in large numbers because of the public backlash? The amount of information that is now coming out and is confirming many of the suspicions people might have had a couple of years ago is making a dramatic change in the very fabric of our country. And this is incredibly important, folks, because, again, if you'd have just come and said, listen, just trust me, these were bad guys, people would not have believed you. If you would have said 3 years ago, hey, they're going to let in like 6 million people into the country, nobody would have believed that. They would have thought that's just ridiculous. That's not going to happen. And yet we saw it. We watched it. So there's a lot of wisdom in this slow revelation. And this also mirrors biblical truth, because Elohim could easily have canceled the 6-day program, right? He could have. He's sovereign, but he didn't. He wanted us to see just how wicked and evil is. We need to see it. It's one thing to hear about it, read it in a book, have somebody tell you, even somebody that goes out, sees it for themselves and comes back and gives you an eyewitness account. It's a whole different thing when you experience it for yourself. And so I believe this is great wisdom that we get to see this stuff. And as we see it, as we get to look at it, as we're going, wait a minute, this is crazy town, all right? That's when we really wake up. And people are doing their homework. And like I said many, many times to you, we do not learn when someone tells us something. We learn when we fact check it. Okay? That's why they're trying desperately to shut down communication, they're going to try and shut down the whole internet. I mean, they're trying to shut down every channel of communication so that you won't be able to continue the awakening that's occurring. And, we're seeing it affect. This is telling me that we are seeing a major shift going on right now. And that's coming right. If you guys remember 2015, so I got to take you back a little bit. The Supreme Court was lit up in rainbow colors. Remember that? And the Ruach of Elohim came unto me, saying, they have declared war on heaven. They declared war. Okay? And so, and I actually got the word, and I announced it the night before the ruling, and then the ruling came out the next day. That was my way of knowing I had, in fact, heard accurately from Elohim. And he said it was a declaration of war. And so, isn't it interesting that now, 2023, we're seeing a shift. And so, folks, this is important. Look at this. The Supreme Court rules for a designer who doesn't want to make wedding cakes or wedding websites for gay couples. What? This is a big shift. This indicates spiritually that there's a shift occurring, that there's awakening occurring. And these are the macro pictures that I like to take a look at, because it's chartable. It's something you can actually see changing. Of course, you all remember that the Supreme Court reversed the Roe v. Wade decision, which was rife with fraud. Even one of the litigants renounced the case itself, but it filled the narrative, and it was accomplishing a goal. Now we're finding out more information about, again, connected to food. I told you you're not going to want to know certain information. And so it is beyond disgusting what we are learning today. And I'm so grateful to see, even if it's a little too little too late, it's better now than never to see pushback and to see people saying, hold up, this has gone to crazy town. We need to stop this. Okay? And it's been a busy week for the Supreme Court. Folks, I don't think they're done. So we may still yet see more announcements. There's a lot of chatter about additional announcements coming out for the 4th of July. So we'll have to all watch and see, woohoo, if we're going to get some fireworks or not. We'll wait and see. Okay? But the Supreme Court also struck down a racist, of course, Natural News, way to go, Mike Adams. He calls it right out. He calls it racist affirmative action admissions policies at U.S. colleges and universities as progressive lefts demand. And they're upset about this, folks. This really got people upset. There's a lot of folks angry because they think this was something that was helping out. But I got to tell you something. These programs sound great on their face, but they're insulting to achievement. I can't forget something I heard Clarence Thomas say, that because of affirmative action, the presumption is that you wouldn't have accomplished, if you're a minority, you wouldn't have accomplished what you accomplished were it not for the sort of extra hand up. And that does insult high achieving people. And so I can understand how that was a different perspective. And I think it's something to be respected. So, but nevertheless, these things are coming down, and I think they should. It should be based on merit, and things should be based on merit, not on a particular group that they have identified as disadvantaged. And by the way, these same rules did not apply to all minorities, and that's another thing that was absolutely aghast to see, that it only benefited a certain minority group or certain minority groups and did not benefit all minority groups. And so, once again, it was an uneven, foolish decision or foolish program to begin with, not very well thought out. And instead, we need to incentivize performance and incentivize people to do better and strive for excellence and to be a blessing, right? So we don't want to just encourage something that is not based in performance. And honestly, the answer was never going to be forcing universities to behave better. It was going to come, is only going to come because we change the way we think. I think most people who are, level-headed and balanced, understand that. And so, again, as a minority, I can tell you that it was a very insulting thing. So, again, if you were, and I know other minority people that feel exactly the same way. So, so if you were going, oh my, I feel sorry for the minorities. Well, just so you know, there's a good percentage of minorities that do not like did not like that program. Very happy to see it dismantled. Just so you're aware. I mean, just so you can go, oh, okay, because some people think that was really helping, and now they took away something that was helping, and in reality, it really was not. And so we just need to encourage actual performance, encourage what's real, right? Don't artificially affect things. And that is all very communistic, by the way. You're affecting the market, you're touching it. You shouldn't do that. I don't believe government was not the intention of the founding fathers, and certainly most citizens don't want government involved in high levels in their lives. And so this is definitely going the right way. Get them out. Speaking of governments having some trouble, here's a topic we've been staying away from for weeks because it was sort of, the unwritten rule, don't talk about France. Nobody was talking about it. And I talk about it a little bit, but I didn't want to, get too deep into it because, well, these guys are pretty heavy-handed. Protests are sweeping France, and here's what you need to know. France has been rocked by a wave of protests after a 17-year-old youth was shot by police near Paris on Tuesday, sparking a ban on demonstrations in some cities, travel warnings, and reigniting a debate over policing in marginalized communities. Scenes emerged of people setting fires to vehicles and climbing onto buildings with smashed windows, while riot police officers fiercely clashed with demonstrators. The unrest prompted a crisis response from French President Emmanuel Macron, who held an emergency meeting with ministers as he attempts to bridge divisions and unite the country in his second term. So what sparked the protests? Well, they're saying because a teenager was shot. And of course, once we go into the story of this teenager, what we find is George Floyd 2.0. Just another, basically roadblock running, no driver's license thug who kept provoking the police, pushing the envelope, and finally ran through a stop and had a confrontation, and it did not end well. So the graph of messing around and finding out. He messed around and he found out. And this is going to keep happening, folks. It's this kind of stuff they want happening. Remember, they're trying to provoke social cataclysm as part of their strategy because they want to give you a crisis that then they can provide the solution for. So this is being done on a mass global scale, so as to basically force the world, I think, to capitulate to this crazy. I know, it's nuts. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the logic of an abuser. So only an abuser thinks like this. Like, I'm going to punch you in the face. You better love me. Only an abuser thinks like that. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the logic of really abusive, out of control people that are used to getting their own way, but don't have to earn anything or work in the real world. It's a big disconnect. And I believe that that's what's now manifesting is just how disconnected this bureaucratic class is from the real world. And it's laughable. And so here we have conflagrations. We've got issues. If this stuff starts happening here, like it's happened in France, okay, which that's their hope, is that it will. It's already been spreading. Well, then we need our military, right? We're going to need, our military responding, except they came under attack as well. Biological warfare attack, okay? And in fact, right now, there's 300 military members that have launched a $500 million lawsuit over the mandates that obviously affected them. And this is the Canadian Armed Forces. And so, again, there's a lot of pushback that wasn't there just a little while ago, and it's starting to emerge. And folks, I got to tell you, this is important that we understand that this is happening, because this is civil war. This is a civil conflict, and it's getting more heated. Around 330 active or former members of the Canadian Armed Forces who say they were harmed by COVID-19 vaccine mandates have filed a class action lawsuit against the high-ranking members of the military, seeking $500 million in damages, and they're suing their military commanders. That's an interesting tact, because how many know that if they were operating under the color of law but did something that was against the law, it won't matter that they were following CDC guidelines or anything else like that. It won't matter whose guidelines you're following. I was just following orders. That was it. It's not my fault. I was just following orders. That didn't work in Nuremberg. It's not going to work here. So, folks, get ready. It's about to get real dicey out there. And again, the level of information being pushed out at the same time. This is what makes this dangerous. Okay, guys? It's not just one thing or the other. It's that it's all happening concurrently. It's all happening one after another on top of one another. And one of the things that we're seeing right now that is a massive attack, and is a good thing for us, so don't get upset about it, but just understand it's going on, is they are decimating the power of the dollar. They are, remember when the towers fell? Well, this is a different tower that's fallen. And these towers are getting detonated in very specific places so as to bring this demolition. And at some point, there won't be the slow demolition effort. It's going to just go kaboom. And we're going to see the fulfillment of the scripture that talks about one day. In one day, we're going to see that. And you're seeing rumblings that are indicating it. Here's one of them. Argentina has now used the yuan. So the yuan is the official currency of China. China, where the virus came from, okay? So Argentina is now using the yuan. Why does this matter? It's the first time it's ever happened to settle part of its IMF debt. The government of Alberto Fernandez paid the equivalent of 2.7 billion in Chinese currency in the international organization's reserve assets. The lack of dollars in its central bank international reserves forced the government of Argentina to make an unprecedented decision this Friday. For the first time, it met a payment obligation with the International Monetary Fund in Chinese yuan, worth the equivalent of $1 billion US, with a further 1.7 billion dispersed in special drawing rights, considered the IMF's currency, as it is a reserve asset made up of a basket of world's main currencies. And so again, these are the kinds of things that might fly under the radar. What does this mean? It is indicating the continued demise of the Federal Reserve dollar. So, we need to distinguish that from the U.S. Treasury if it decides to issue its own dollar, because it will not be the same instrument or the same monetary unit as the Federal Reserve note, FRN, that is currently collapsing. So this is a foreign made, like a private label money that we've been using, but that's not really ours. I know. So we don't mind if it falls. All of our debts are in it. And when it falls, say goodbye. So that's a good thing. But it's going to cause problems because you got to switch, right? You got to switch to something else. So there's rumors and chatter that we're on a different system already, but we got to see it in operation. So there are several things that are indicating that everything is not well in Denmark. And this is why I was very concerned. You want to know why I was concerned about them being able to borrow any money, even though they pass a debt limit? It's because of this kind of information, folks. This is the kind of stuff that you got to keep an eye out, because they can't lie to you then. Look at this. This is Fred, the economic data out of St. Louis. Okay, liabilities and capital liabilities, earning remittances due to the U.S. Treasury. Since September of 2022, they stopped making any of those payments. You know that payment we just talked about that we just saw Argentina had to make in yuan? Okay, they're not making any of them. They're not doing nothing. They're blowing it off. Okay, and so while other countries are trying desperately to figure out how to pay their bills, we are sitting in one that's already been defaulted and sitting in default. Did you see that graph? Okay, that's no joke, folks. This is where we really are. And it doesn't make any difference what they do. They can't seem to solve their own problems they created. Okay, they created. What's the saying? As goes California, so goes the country, right? Oh, okay. Well, then in that case, you better plan on homelessness taking over, because the homeless population in Los Angeles grew 10% despite the city spending millions. This is, by the way, this is utter and complete lie, poppycocky nonsense. Somebody got those millions, but it wasn't these folks. All right, because it wouldn't take me millions. It wouldn't take any reasonable, good community developer millions of dollars to solve these problems. It's called real estate and housing and jobs. It's not hard, folks. It's not hard, especially when they're willing to spend this money. But what they're really doing is bribing one another and playing games. The homeless problem in Los Angeles has grown significantly worse in the last year, with homelessness climbing 9% in the city and 10% in LA County. Around 75,000 people are now living on the streets there, despite major investments in the city to stem the problem. And according to the count, which was carried out by a team of volunteers numbering in the thousands for the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority across a 3-day period, 75,518 individuals were living in either a makeshift shelter, tent, van, car, RV, or interim housing. Yeah, well, you want to add everybody living in a hotel or an apartment too? Because they're homeless as well. If you want to, temporary housing is in there. Well, that's all apartments. That's all everything. And folks, we have lost the sense of home ownership and pride in ownership. We've lost that in this country. American dream has been attacked. And it all has come from this fiat money that is fake. The cost of living in California is so astronomical. I want to write a sympathy note to everybody in California. I'm not even kidding. It is ridiculous to live there, and it's always been a little ridiculous, and now it's just gone over. It just went crazy, and but it's affecting everybody. And so this is something that we need to realize, is that everybody's feeling the crunch. Why? Even George Soros is even struggling these days, guys. I mean, he's having trouble. Soros Foundation had to cut 40% of its staff. I thought they were doing great. I thought the economy was expanding 2%. Isn't that what they said? They're so full of it. They're such liars. Okay? They are constantly lying. And I don't even know if this guy's even still alive anymore. There's chatter that he's been dead for a while. Open Society Foundation is a nonprofit founded by billionaire George Soros, plans to cut at least 40% of its staff in the coming months. So they announced that they handed it over to the son, and they use that as the opportunity. Never let a good crisis go to waste. So, hey, we're going to fire 40% of you, just so you know. Hey, thanks for helping us bring in globalism. Thank you for helping us, with all of our, undermining plans. You all can go now. And these are the kinds of things that we're hearing, folks. And now you're seeing BRICS nations are dumping U.S. treasuries. I'm waiting for further confirmation, so I'll talk about it next week. Because, with the holiday tomorrow, banking is a little funky this week, right? It's a little weird. So we're going to watch. Next week, we'll come back and talk about it, because I think they're going to be dumping. If the chatter's correct, they should be dumping U.S. treasuries pretty hardcore this week. And, now we're seeing stories here's one from Zero Hedge, warning that we're about to see the biggest monetary shock in 52 years. And it keeps coming back down to the same guys. I recently revealed the so-called BRICS Plus countries will announce the creation of a new currency at its annual Leaders Summit conference in August. 22 through the 24th. And it's going to be the biggest upheaval in international finance since 1971, which takes us back a jubilee. It's taking direct aim at the dollar. Direct aim at the dollar. Remember, that's the Federal Reserve note. And so it appears likely that the new BRICS currency will be linked to a weight of gold. So what happens when the world switches? And as we start seeing that rumbling, you think they're going to wait till it actually happens? Or will there be some movement just before? The smart money will move before it actually happens, right? So as these things start becoming more official and no longer rumor, as the official announcements for currency resets, revaluations, reestablishments of a new currency standard, all of these things forebode a massive, massive upheaval in status quo. This is why we need to realize what's going on. And if gold all of a sudden pops, which is something that we'll keep an eye on, and it devalues the dollar, which we expect it to do, that's going to present a massive point of revaluation, where those currencies in the world that are asset-backed will dominate the day, and those currencies that are fiat, which means they are backed by nothing but a printing press, they will meet their demise. So this has been rumored about and talked about for a long time. I first heard about currency resets and revaluations in 2014 after a meeting. A gentleman came up to me and asked me about it. I told him to buy oil. I said, I don't see a revaluation happening anytime soon, but go buy some oil. You'll do well. And I just said it by the Ruach. I didn't know anything. I'm not an investment advisor. I have no idea. I just said it by the Ruach. And this was 2014. And if he took my oil was trading at like $25, $30 or something like that. And if he took my advice, he did really well. So at least there's that. But yeah, that was the first time I heard about revaluations. And now it's taken all this time, but we're seeing that is in fact, starting to come to pass. In other news, one of the other things that we need to be aware of, and again, folks, whether it's happening naturally or if it's being assisted in any way, makes no difference. The net result is that we're seeing temperatures across the country and in growing areas that are unprecedented, and people are complaining about the heat. People that are used to heat, that are used to hot temperatures, are now saying, hey, there's something different about this heat. And that also is part of the prophecies that were in the scripture about the sun scorching people. So as we watch these things come on, we're taking note of it. Texas may reach temperatures hotter than 99% of the world as dangerous heat waves persist. And this is a very bad thing, because Texas has already got a highly strained power grid. And as you well know, Texas is under invasion from the south and from the west. There are people that are leaving blue states and going to red states. And so Texas has gotten a massive increase in population in the last couple of years, and they now have to deal with that. So a large swath of Texas are forecast to be hotter than 99% of the world, as Dallas stretches scorching hot days was expected to reach its peak of 107 degrees. And folks, that's hot. Okay, that is some serious heat going on in Texas. And that is going to cause some serious problems, folks, especially with regard to the grid, because, again, and this is one of the areas that we're paying close attention to, something that we're continuing to work on and fighting, because we found certain components in dealing with energy that don't work, though they're being promoted very heavily out there. We'll talk about that in weeks to come. A heat dome appears to be over Texas and in the whole over that part of the country. And there's a lot of agriculture that comes from that part of the world, folks. So this is something of concern. A colossal heat dome is literally baking much of the country, and this could cause widespread crop failure. Okay? So if you live in the Southwest, you don't need me to tell you that it's hot, and a major heat dome is affecting the southern part of the country. So, again, something for us to be aware of. You need to know that this is the situation, and so if you're seeing food scarcity starting to come in, remember that it's not in the news anymore. But if you recall, there were 2,000 or close to 2,000 food processing and food manufacturing plants that were taken offline either by accidents, coincidences, other coincidences, and other coincidences. As a matter of fact, they were all destroyed by coincidence. And now they're not available. So on top of, that problem, you now have this problem continuing to create an issue. If you've never ever needed incentive to begin to take command of your own food supply, boy, oh boy, are you getting plenty of it now. And again, I'm not going to show you this video, but if you have the stomach for it, you can go look. There's a new video out that's now making the rounds. It's going viral, showing how they make ground beef. And it's beyond disgusting, folks. And if you think that they have any scruples or whatever, they don't care. They're selling a product. They're making money. They don't care about your health. I think we're pretty past that point now where we're aware. They don't care about our health. They don't care about how we feel. Okay? And so I think they want to eliminate your choices. This is what it looks like to me. Looks to me like your choices are being reduced so that they can solve the problem. Crisis, problem, solution, right? So they create the crisis so that you start to cry for a solution and they go, well, I just so happen to have just what you need. Awesome burgers. The awesome burger. Here, we're going to give you awesome burgers. Or they'll call it like super good. Made it from the super good company. It's right in your face. And it just never stops, okay? And they continue to do these things to play games with us. Remember last week we said, okay, just to lighten it up just a little bit here. Because last week, they're looking for the sub. And I said, hey, come on. You got to be kidding me. You guys can track, killer whales. You can track dolphins. You can track all kinds of things. You got 2 billionaires and a couple 100 millionaires and all these wealthy people in this, and nobody thought to, like, we weren't buying that, right? Okay. And so, I think little by little, more and more people sort of picked at that story to where they had to sort of backtrack a bit and sort of cover themselves. So now the new thing is the Navy underwater microphones reportedly detected the implosion of the ill-fated Titan submersible just hours after it began its journey. So that just confirms to all of us, we don't even need to read the rest of this article. This now confirms what we suspected, that the entire exercise was a ruse meant to absorb our time and pull on our heartstrings, right? Get us on this edge of the cliff story so we don't notice the other things coming out, like impeachments and indictments and other things, okay? And information that is hyper damning, revelations that are now being publicized. This is why they want to implement censorship. This is why they want to shut down what they consider to be hate speech or whatever else they want to call it. Folks, this is a war for your sovereign rights. And by the way, it's another thing that you're going to hear more about in the coming weeks. You haven't heard about it so much now, but you will. You will hear about how that those who are biologically compromised, let's say, are now going to deal with the suspension of human rights because they now are in a different category that has never been litigated before. So stand by. This is going to get even more interesting as we go. But as we suspected, folks, they knew right away. So they took everybody on this wild goose chase as a collective trauma. And what do we know? We know they love trauma-based mind control. They continue to do. They don't need mass traumas. They can do minor traumas. The little traumas work too if they come one after another. Like think of an engine. And so if you have this trauma, then another trauma, and another trauma, and they're hitting you 2-3 times in a day, they keep moving you. They keep moving you. By the end of a week, you're exhausted. Do you find yourself where you're like, this is why people check out of the news, or I can't take anymore. The roller coaster ride they take you on emotionally drains you. This is part of wearing out the saints, okay? Because you're all empathic. You all feel things. You feel for other people. You have such a big heart. So they just want to wear your heart out, okay? And again, they're wanting to shut down anything that counters their narrative. Here you go. Thank you again, Mike Adams. Naturalnews.com's nailing it. UN's a global digital a global digital compact to create Internet 2.0 with no freedom of speech and social credit scores for everyone. Which, again, there's massive pushback on. So now that people are aware of it, thank you to folks like this that let us know, right? Because this is what creates the pushback, is the notification. If it weren't for those news organizations that are letting you know, there'd be no pushback. You wouldn't know about the plan till the day they're kicking it in, not giving you any chance to organize a defense. So this is why you need a free press, by the way. United Nations has released a follow-up report to its 2021 Our Common Agenda called the Global Digital Compact. You can take it and walk with it. That's what we think. That's, like its name suggests, presents a framework for enslaving the entire world under digitalized tyranny. And basically, it's a new internet where no free speech will be allowed. Yeah, well, we hereby summarily reject such a notion. We call it illegal and unauthorized, and we speak its demise. We do not agree, nor do we allow it. And as the ecclesia here upon the earth, we do not give authorization or any form of blessing to those kinds of plans. And see, I told you, folks, these guys, they don't care. They don't really care what we think. You know, they're gonna do what they believe they're entitled to do. How many know that we have to actually stop them? So there has to be a stopping of it. And now, to make, to sort of bring the height of anxiety even a little higher, because it's not high enough. So they're going to stoke it up a little more. And the U.S. is now warning Americans against traveling to China because of the risk of being wrongfully detained and arbitrary exit bans and all kinds of things. Well, it may also be because there's about to be a conflict with China too, right? So there could be that too, right? There's another good reason why you shouldn't be traveling to China. And they also may be using certain people as negotiating tools. Or haven't you seen that before? Where they suddenly charge somebody with something and then they're holding them. So it's a really good idea to be wise in your travel, and understand the situation that you're dealing with, and what is really happening. At the moment that you're traveling. I've got family that is currently in Europe, so I'm very concerned, especially as we continue to see that there's almost no end in sight. 1,000 buildings are burnt, 5,600 vehicles destroyed, 3,300 arrests in the first week of France's riots. And so France is definitely lighting up. And this is, you might call it the heart of Europe. You might say it's the heart of Europe is on fire. You might say that a central country that went for wholeheartedly embraced the California program, right? They embraced the liberal agenda, the New World Order agenda, the globalist agenda, and it's caused their very utter demise. They will not soon recover from this week. The amount of damage that has been done is legendary. And there doesn't appear to be an end in sight. These are folks who were invited in who had no love for the country, no investment in its infrastructure, no commitment to its culture, no allegiance to its national sovereignty. So what were they expecting? Well, now we know. So if anyone ever suggests such an experiment in the future, we can point at this and say, well, we've already tried that. And here was the result. And this is one of the things that I believe we needed to see, folks. As much as we wish we could just go in and round up all this stuff, until people saw what the end of the Department of Education, for example, what its ultimate goals were, until you saw, their shady plans, you kept giving them the benefit of the doubt. Until you see what Big Pharma's ultimate goal is, you keep giving them the benefit of the doubt until you learn about how they're getting paid for certain things. And you get that information and you realize, oh my goodness, these are not my friends. It is as you systematically awaken in each one of these areas that you then begin to make right decisions. Now you're thinking. Now you're planning wiser with your food. Now you're thinking about where you are physically because you're seeing the slow trap that they're bringing in. We're going to be talking about the surveillance state and how that continues to evolve right under our noses, right in front of our faces. And they call it these great euphemistic names that sound almost innocent, but what we don't realize is what they're erecting around us and how that is meant to limit, if not eliminate, your freedom. And so, again, since we're here on Independence Week and we're talking about freedom a lot, it's pretty important that we that we learn that freedom has to be fought for. Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of freedom has to be watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants from time to time. I don't think he's wishing that. I think he's observing that if you're going to stay a free nation, or if you're going to hold on to your sovereignty, well, then you better know that there are those who wish to take it. That's the very basis of criminality. What is a thief but somebody that will cross into your house and take your things? What is a murderer but someone that thinks their life is more important than yours, willing to take it? What is an adulterer but that somebody that does not believe in the sanctity of a boundary and is willing to cross that boundary for personal benefit and pleasure? And so, folks, this is sin reaching its zenith. And this is why it's important that all of us, no matter where we are, find our place with our brothers and sisters to separate yourselves from those who are going headlong into destruction. My encouragement to every one of you is that you use this time that you have wisely. If you're finding yourself choking on fumes, if you think that's just smoke coming down from Canada, you're a bit naive. And so if you're finding yourself discomfited, maybe a little too close to some of these things, that's a good time to start praying, fasting, and asking Elohim to tell you if where you are is where you should be. And so I suspect that there's many, many people that are going to be moving. There's more and more moving every day that are starting to get reconnected, connecting up with people in different parts of the world and saying, I thought I would finish we were planning on retiring over here by the lake or wherever until they poisoned the lake, right? Until there was noxious fumes coming up from the lake. And then radon gas was coming up from the basement. Time to go, right? Well, it's the same thing, folks. It's the same thing. And so this is why it's important that we don't double down on foolish decisions, but instead realize that these warnings are coming. These indicators were written in the scripture so that you and I would make wise decisions as we see the day approaching. After all, the people that get caught up with him in the clouds have to be alive, and they have to remain unto the coming of the King. And so if you plan on being alive and remain, you're going to have to be very strong and very courageous. Amen and amen. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. It's been a pleasure sitting with you. Always a blessing to sit with each and every one of you. We'll see you again 1 week from today here at the same time on this channel. And it's our pleasure to continue this 10,000-foot view as we watch these events, as we see the day approaching. Thank you again for joining us. May Elohim bless each and every one of you. Good night.